This is PJNET.TV, and this is my perspective and comments. In this video segment of My Perspective and Comments, we cover politics, society here and abroad, and the events of the day that are shaping our nation. PJNET.TV, My Perspective and Comment, coming to you with a worldview, one nation under God. Welcome to My Perspective and Comments. And we're going to update you regarding Wuhan, China, COVID-19 flu virus, and what's been going on here in the States. Flu shots are still being promoted, pushed, and the giveaways. They're giving away beer, they're giving away donuts, Coca-Cola, you name it, anything to try and entice people to get the vaccine. Free meals, you name it, whatever they can do to entice people to take the vaccine. They're now deploying that to coax people in. There have been continual stories regarding some of the adverse reactions that some of these vaccines are eliciting. The blood clotting and the deaths that are taking place in some of those that have gotten these vaccines. So that there are still some adverse reactions to some people regarding the vaccine. They're also looking to lower the age. Right now, they're talking about 12-year-olds to get these emergency use only vaccines. I want to repeat that. Emergency use, which means that they haven't gone through the approval period and the studies that the FDA can say these have been stamped for approval, not emergency use. So we're talking about putting in emergency use medicines in our kids' arms. Just let that sink in. But that's what they're pushing right now in a population that almost 100% are not going to get seriously ill or die, and they want to bring that to our children. We're seeing more of the red states that are saying no to the COVID passport, where you can't buy, sell, or go anywhere unless you have that cleared passport. A lot of the blue states have been wanting to embrace that in putting demands like you can't go to a sports event unless you can show, unless you have a passport. Now they are saying that a passport or a negative test, COVID test, that's still in there, but there's more and more states, and even here in New York, they have they're talking about some of the outdoor concerts that the governor said he's now going to be opening that up at I think a week or two from now, where some of these music venue theaters, outdoor theaters, will be able to open up. And what they're talking about putting in place is a two-tiered patrons to these facilities, where some will be in a section. If you're vaccinated, then you don't have to have that 6-foot distance. If you have not been vaccinated, then you're going to be put off in some other area. So they're putting a two-tiered situation there from the vaccinated and unvaccinated, and that's right down the Democrat playbook, where everybody's different, and you've got to be shunned away from one group or another. Everybody's separate, and that's what they're trying to push right now by regarding this. But one constant theme that you're going to be hearing, and you're going to be hearing justifications not to take it away, is regardless if everyone is vaccinated, you're still going to be wearing that face mask. And ultimately, what is that? It's a sign of the population's compliance to the government. That's what it is. It's a signal that the American people are in compliance to what the government is pushing. Plain and simple. Especially when the science, the so-called science, has already shown that the masks aren't effective. And regardless of the so-called professionals, there's study after study that's been showing that the ineffectiveness. Because if they were effective, then you wouldn't be having, like California and many of these states and countries that have been in 100% lockdown, masks compliance throughout over the last 9 months to 10 months, have had spikes, several throughout this whole time. So if the masks were truly being effective, why are we still seeing the masks? The masks being ineffective, and why is that? Because they aren't as effective as the so-called professionals are telling us. And again, the other thing that we really need to make a point of is you talk about the science and following the science. Science throughout history has said if you're at herd immunity, or your population, 90% of your population has been inoculated with a vaccine, then you can get back to normal, where you don't have to go through the distancing and all the gyrations that they're expecting us to do right now. But that's not the case with this. You hear Fauci being asked a question, and finally some of the liberal media are asking the questions that we already knew. We already have been asking those questions. If everybody's vaccinated, why are we still wearing a mask? And when are we going to get the media has been pushing Fauci and pushing some of these so-called experts that, hey, we were told if we got vaccinated, we could get our country back to normal. And that's not the case. And there's been a lot of mumbling and fumbling and backtracking and double talk. Ultimately, they want to keep using the mask as their virtual signal and their compliance signal that you're still complying to their edicts and their control. That's what I believe we're seeing right now with the failure to take the masks off once the population has become vaccinated. And we're in many cities right now, we are at herd immunity. Right now we're seeing things going on here. Time is moving past. We just saw over this last week Biden's 100 days in his run, And we've seen, as I've mentioned before, we've seen a lot of industries that have been taken offline because of Biden. Good paying jobs like the XL pipeline in this first 100 days gone. Excuse me, a crisis at the border, southern border, and we're seeing kids in cages and kids that were supposedly. We were told that in this country we had to have COVID protocols, and everybody was supposed to be distanced. Not if you go to some of these Biden facilities where they're housing these kids. They're all on top of one another. And the refusal in this first 100 days for Joe Biden to concede and admit that, yes, there is a crisis on the border. Very, very obvious that there's major problems, and it's not getting any worse. And talking about Biden and his the policies that we're seeing that have come through for Joe Biden have been and are bad for America. And we can take a look at an example of that right now with what is taking place. And this is happening not in just one industry, but in many areas, in many jobs, the varying jobs in our nation. Right now, we're seeing that the restaurant owners have been very concerned, and they've been reporting that they are looking to hire to get people back, back working again. But because of the Biden administration, they have thrown money out there. So now what's happened is people are getting more money to stay home than to go back to work. And the restaurant owners are saying that, this is a big problem. We can't get anybody to work. Now, that's in the restaurants, but it's happening in so many industries in America because people are getting paid more to stay home. Now, some of the states right now have made the right move. They've started to pull some of these give outs, and say no. And I think the $300, and I'm not sure if it comes from the state, but they've pulled that. So now it puts more incentive to people to get off their butt and get back to work. And rather than, take the handout and say, well, wait a minute, what's Biden think I'm crazy, or people think I'm crazy that I'm going to go to work when I can have my hand out and not work? And that's kind of a signal of our society and where our society is. And a lot of people would feel so uncomfortable, like they were stealing from the government, knowing that they are able-bodied. There's work to be out there, and they'd rather stay home and take from the government. So. But now we're starting to see some of the red states, and you'll see more of that happening. That incentive is going to be removed. And what's sad about this, folks, is that the states have to bypass this administration because of their bad policies that's been foisted on America right now. Let's see. So much going on right now, and some negative things when it comes to the Biden administration. But Biden has also, they were planning on, the vets were planning on getting together on Memorial Day. A 30-year-old tradition on Memorial Day, where the rolling Thunder Motors, the Rolling Thunder, having a Memorial Day parade. Biden nixed that, said no, they're not going to have that this year, and that has been a tradition on coming down Constitution Avenue there in D.C. But that tradition will be isn't going to happen under Joe Biden, I guess, at this point. I'd like to turn attention to some of the things, the trials and what's been going on with our police. And it's been reported that one of the jurors from the Floyd trial against Chauvin has been involved in the Black Lives Matter and going to some of their functions, and I guess it was reported that he was at one of their Black Lives Matter gatherings and with his BLM t-shirt on. And what we're hearing is that not just that one juror, but all the intimidation and the incitement surrounding that trial, which was negatively, many have been saying that negatively has affected the trial and some of the other jurors on that trial. When you hear people like Maxine Waters getting up and basically inciting violence and intimidating the trial itself, and inciting what would happen if they didn't get the verdict that they wanted. And you heard that right out of Maxine's mouth, pushing that, spewing that during at the end of the Chauvin trial there over George Floyd. A Atlanta police officer has been rehired there in there was let's see, what state was that? Atlanta. The Atlanta police officer, the Rashad shooting. Rayshard Brooks was shot. The officers had stopped him. The police had gotten a call from a Wendy's that there was trouble there in the parking lot, and the police showed up and tried to make an arrest. And Rashid Brooks struggled with two officers. One showed up first, and then the next officer showed up, and there was a struggle, and one of the officers went to the ground, and the Rashard Brooks grabbed a stun gun and was running away and pointed the stun gun at an officer and tried firing, and the officer shot, and they fired him, that officer. But the way that there was no the officer had no his statement or any recourse to be heard his side, and it went through a review from Atlanta's civil courts, and they looked at that and said, yeah, that wasn't right, and basically they said, no, this can't stand. So this officer has been reinstated, and I'm not sure what the blowback's going to be there, because I'm sure that there'll be many that will be upset that this took place. But I just like to point out at this time, folks, we're seeing a lot coming out of the race baiters like Maxine Waters and some of those left-wing talking heads there at CNN and MSNBC. But I'm looking at you're hearing the drumbeat. Oh, we need police training, and we need to reimagine the police. I really think that what needs to be done is maybe some legislation for civil and law-abiding citizens, where the citizens in this nation have it so that they get a good understanding, where it starts in our school systems, about being a good person, a good citizen in the United States. Like, and I bring these things up it's typically a no-brainer for most everyone, but there's a segment in our society right now where these common sense values don't take place. For instance, maybe something that should be a civil training is, if you're out on parole and you're still carrying a gun around, you could be shot. When you're in the streets beating people and hurting people, you could be attained, and if you resist arrest, you could be shot. And it's not that it's the police's fault, but there are conditions of how you act in society. If a policeman stops you on a traffic stop and you try and run him over, you could be shot. Simple, common sense things, but there's a society, and some of these professors in some of these colleges would say, no. I mean, the police, you can try and run them over, you can try and hurt them, you can try and shoot them, and hey, they have no recourse. And that's what we're seeing in many areas of society today, in the so-called learned, what they're teaching and bringing to our young people. When you start hearing regarding in our school systems, in our kids, when they think of the police as not an organization to look up to, the policeman isn't someone to look up to, and that is being taught from grade school right now. We're seeing that right up through college, through the college. So, we talk about police reform, but it almost seems like we need to have a civil training program. And we're starting to see states like Florida, Governor DeSantis putting in legislation that, civics being taught in our classrooms to be good citizens. Kristi Noem there in South Dakota has the same type of legislation. We're starting to see more and more states stepping up, and President Trump talked about this too. Having civics being brought back into our school system. Very important, because what we're seeing right now is, the people that are there to, when you pick up the phone and call 911 and you expect somebody to come and help you, then we need to support the police. And again, everything gets overlooked when you start talking about 99% of our police force are good officers, and you have a few that shouldn't be wearing blue. Deal with that small group, rather than doing the broad brush painting of all our police officers have a problem, and that they're the problem. They're not the problem. And in fact, one of the key issues to why we're seeing the rise in these conflicts is because these liberal politicians are letting all the felons, rapists, and murderers out of prison. That's what's been taking place over the last year. They're emptying the jails. And it's not... Hardened criminals are right now walking our streets, and we're seeing, I mean, if you take a look at the majority of the violent arrests that are taking place, just take a look at the rap sheet and just take a look at, oh, out on bail, out on bail, out on bail, out on bail. That's what's been taking place. And so there's no wonder why we're seeing more and more police interactions and these type of situations are happening, because they're dealing with hardened criminals that should be in jail, but these liberal governors and these judges are letting them out. They go in one day, out the next day, and right back in again. Revolving door, and they don't stop. There's no deterrent to crime anymore. In fact, what's happening is the incentive is there, because many of these criminals right now are saying, hey, nothing's going to happen. I show up for an appearance, show up in the court, and the judge lets me right back out again. And that's what we've been seeing in this country over the last 8 months to a year. The emptying of jails and putting hardened criminals out on the street. And disturbing, and we're seeing more and more of that. And I'm just hoping at this point that, and I really think that we're going to see in 2022 the House and Senate will definitely be back in Republican hands, because I mean, look at this nation. I mean, we had energy independence, and now we're talking about getting right back into being dependent on foreign oil and paying high prices for fuel. Right now, well, what are we seeing? Not only fuel, but we're seeing food prices going up. They're talking about inflation kicking in. And it's all a result of the policies, these bad policies that the Biden administration and the Democrats are enacting. So again, folks, we need to pray for our nation. Be vigilant in that we some of the foundations, the foundational things that we look to in America, those institutions, our school systems are suffering right now with what's being taught there. Colleges, the same. We're seeing a struggling in our churches, and where we're starting to see pastors debating and pro-abortion pastors in the pulpit right now that we're seeing, and these group of pastors gathering together, these pro-choice pastors that we're seeing being vocal nowadays. So a lot of institutions that, and obviously those that are supposedly representing us in Congress, in the Senate, our politicians, many, we're seeing many problems in those institutions too, and right to the top of the ticket there at the White House, and the issues that we're seeing right now in the presidency. So pray for our nation that that we there's so many things that are pushing in the United States and in the world right now, and where you're hearing evil is good and good is evil, and the war and against the church and the silencing. We're hearing more and more of laws that are coming right up against what you can say. And now there's even, with this COVID and these lockdowns, they've even been emboldened enough to say, okay, well, wait a minute. We see an inching to regulate or try and regulate what actually is said in the pulpit to a congregation. And that's where we're seeing the enemy Satan has been busy, and we see government actually moving into that area to try and silence the church. So pray for our nation that that there's a revival, hearts that God touches hearts, and there's a revival that sweeps through our nation, because we need God to step in and stir His people to just draw closer and repent from our lackness and lackadaisicalness in what we've been silent about and not spoken up earlier to bring the truth to this society, to actually be the salt for this society. So, folks, continue to pray for our nation, and continue to keep our United States in prayer. And right now we will be shifting gears here for our message for today.